Hi, everyone, and welcome to Failing Up, a limited series from the shallow end about our collecting mistakes, how they impact us, and how they help us better understand ourselves and this hobby. It's about those unpleasant experiences that ultimately make us better collectors. I'm Dave Schwartz, and I wanted to do this series to help us all feel a little less alone in this hobby. We've all made mistakes. No one is perfect. And maybe, just maybe, we can learn from each other. Today's guest is Mark, at MJS Sports Cards on Instagram. These days, Mark is known for a few things, from his Drew Holiday collection to the WNBA, and of course, his beloved LA Lakers. But when he first got back into the hobby, he made the sort of moves and mistakes that would have sent many right back out of the hobby. Perhaps for good. Yet Mark stuck around. And just as importantly, he learned, and he pivoted. He got himself pointed in the right direction. So happy to have back on the podcast Mark at MJS_Sports Cards. Mark, thank you for being here. Tell us about a time you failed.
Great to be here with you, Dave. A time that I failed. So I'm going to take us back to a 1 month period from February 9th, 2021 to March 7th, 2021. And I'll run through 3 transactions from that period. Ja Morant, Panini Prism PSA 10, purchased for $500. Luka Doncic, Panini Prism PSA 9, purchased for $475. March 7th, and then March 7th, 2021, Kevin Durant, 2007, I believe, Topps rookie card, PSA 9, purchased for $450. Now, if you have any comp service or app on your phone, you can look up these 3 cards, and they are each worth maybe 10% or 20% of the prices that I paid for them in that 1 month period in early 2021. So that till today still is like the failure that sticks with me.
I just want to commend you on your willingness to talk about this failure. That is, my heart, my stomach were all collapsing in on themselves as you were talking about it. Not because you're unique and should be singled out, but because I've been there. I understand it. But you were new, right? You were fairly new back into the hobby at that point, and we've all kind of been there. But before we get to the sort of the learning process of it all, maybe just talk about what you were thinking at the time and why you were going for like the Zion and the Ja and whatnot, and what was it like coming into the hobby at that point?
Yeah, and I think you're right. This is when I was coming back into the hobby, like many, like many folks in late 2020 and early 2021. And to take things back to what I was thinking at that time is that I was seeing sports cards, particularly basketball cards, keep rising and rising and rising in prices. I was seeing people lining up outside of Target just to buy boxes of retail, and it was impossible to find cards. It was actually even impossible to find card supplies, right? And so I got swept up in this this kind of speculative hype, right? Like I was watching breakers on YouTube talking about cards. And listening to their advice that you have to get in now, right? Or particular players were hot or undervalued. And this kind of feeling where like this constant feeling where it was like, this was the last train out of town. And if you didn't get on now, you were going to be left behind, right? And so what I was thinking was like, these were good investments. These were things that you could buy and would increase in value, and they wouldn't stop increasing in value. And so, it's a little embarrassing now, like to kind of think back on it, but um, that's where my mind was at that time. And like it was a kind of a moment where like I was looking at sports cards like, oh, this could be a side income, right? Like, or this could be something that I make money from. And it has not turned out to be that.
You mentioned the word embarrassed, and I hope you don't feel like anybody is judging you to feel that embarrassment, but I understand sort of the the internal embarrassment of it. But there are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of stories of people who went through the exact same thing. That was just the culture of what it was like back in 21. At what point in the process did it start to sort of turn in your mind like, maybe this isn't going to work out the way I thought it would?
Yeah. I was as I kind of tracked these particular transactions. It was actually not long, right? Um, I remember following the prices of these cards, following what they would sell for. Like, let's take the John Morant, for example, because it was a round number of what I paid, $500 for a PSA 10. A month later, I was looking, it was like selling for $460. Then it was like $400. And it was like gradually going down and down. Um, and I found myself kind of following, what is it, 130 point or card ladder or whatever it was, or recent comps, and like getting kind of obsessed with that particular price. And it wasn't fun. It was like, it was actually deeply frustrating, right? Like, I wasn't enjoying the hobby. And I think, by the end of 2021, like around October 2021, it kind of became a sort of make or break thing for me, where it's like, well, I'm either going to get out or I have to change the way that I do this. Um, and so what I decided to do at the end of that year is I pretty much started selling all of these cards that I acquired, right? Like, um, so I'm looking at the card ladder value of the PSA 10 for $40, and I sold most of these cards in late 2021. So still not as low as
Good.
that $40 current price, but I lost more than half, in some cases about 60% of the value of the cards. But what I had decided is, like, I was sitting here and watching this piece of cardboard wrapped in a piece of plastic, and like not feeling any happiness about it, and just watching it and hoping, like, all I was hoping for was that the price would change in an upward trajectory, right? Like, all I was hoping for was that the price would go up. And so there was no nostalgia, there was no happiness, there was no pleasure that I was deriving from it. And so what I said is, like, I am going to sell it now for what I can sell it for, and I'm going to take that money and put it towards something that I will enjoy, right? Like, that I will, and like, that I will have a feeling of nostalgia with, that will be something that I want and not something that people tell me to want. And so right around the end of that year, these three cards in particular forced kind of like a fork in a road for moment for me, right? Like, so it's either I am done with this altogether, or I got to find another way to do this. And so what it forced me to do is figure out another way to go about my hobby experience.
So a few things come to mind with what you were saying, ways that could have gone different as the prices started to come down. And you mentioned they were down about half. They weren't to what they are now, down to a tenth. And I didn't mean to taunt you with that $33 sale of the jaw that I just had up there.
It was good. It was good. I liked it.
That was from 2 days ago, as we talk now. But it could have gone other ways. One way could have gone is that you could have sold them, but then tried to find something else to make money on versus try to find some enjoyment, right? But you could have kept thinking, no, I'm going to dig in deeper. I'm going to keep trying to do this investment thing. Or you could have said, I'm out altogether. Forget about this. I can't believe that I just spent my 6 months or a year thinking that I could do this. This hobby stinks. I'm going to be out. But instead you had the sort of the perspective or the frame of mind to redirect it into a more enjoyable way. And it's hard to think remember what we thought or felt 3 years ago. But what was it about the hobby itself, or what you were doing in it at that time, where you thought, no, I do like this. I just don't like this path, and I have this ability to sort of steer myself in a new direction. How were you able to do that, as opposed to just not just to get bitter and leave or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest choice for me was between like not 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 choosing whether to leave or stay, um, but rather, like as you were pointing out, the parameters in which I was going to stay. Right? Was I going to sell and take that money and reinvest it in other cards that would go up potentially, and where I could make that money back? Or was I going to change the way that I approach this thing altogether, and do the hobby a little bit differently? And there, right, like the fundamental question, kind of for me was like, is this going to be this a side hustle where like I can make extra money, or is this going to be a space that that is going to be one for enjoyment, that's going to be outside of work, that's going to be something that takes me away from the stresses of like money and finances and things like that. um, and really, like when I sat down and thought about it, um, approaching the hobby as a space for fun and recreation, like seemed much more appealing to me than a space where I would put in 10 to 15 hours of work a week, right? Like in addition to my full-time job, to maybe make a little bit of money. It like the fun part just sounded a little bit more appealing. And so that's why I like went towards that. Between staying and leaving, um, the thing that happened at the same time as this Luka, and this Kevin Durant, is that there were other cards that I was picking up that would give me so much joy. Like there was, I remember stumbling upon like it's a basketball card that's not popular at all. It's a 1994 Emotion Dickie Simpkins card where he has like a towel over his head. And it's like a card that you can probably get for 30 cents on ComC or something like that. But it was such a fun card, and it gave me it was like a card that like I had around for 2 days, and I was like carrying it around with me. And I would work, and then I would like take the card out and put it on my desk, and I would chuckle whenever I would see that card. And what made me stay and decide not to leave is like that kind of understanding that there was something there in that kind of hobbying, that I wanted to keep. And so, there are a lot of good things and bad things about sports cards and collecting. But I kind of came to a decision where like I can pick and choose. I can have some direction over how I am going to approach this thing. And I can grow and learn what and how I find enjoyment and focus on that. And that's, and I think that's how I kind of approached the decision between all of those options you laid out.
Have there been moments then? I'm guessing the answer is yes. But what have the moments been like then over the last few years since you pivoted and have collected more for enjoyment and less for profit? And those two things are not mutually exclusive. Just because you're collecting for enjoyment doesn't mean you want to flush money down the toilet, right? But how did that early experience, how does it still resonate with you, as you are now more embedded in the hobby and know more of what you want to do and are having a better experience? But how does that ancient memory still sort of help you along in some way?
It does. I think, right, and this is part of why, even if it is embarrassing and a little bit of shameful, I think it's really crucial to kind of talk about it out loud, right? Like, and to kind of share the lessons that resonate with me, and like the reminders that this particular experience serves for me. And like when I think about this, or like when I see myself getting caught up in some habits or in some lines of thinking, that are kind of adjacent to what I was thinking in early 2021, I remind myself of what I think were like the two major mistakes that I made in this early time period, right? Like, and I try to kind of see if I can stay away from making those mistakes again. And those mistakes are, first, I think I was a sheep, right? Like I was allowing myself to be guided by what individuals projected, that like what individuals were kind of presenting as part of their expertise, when they, in reality, they were no more of an expert than I was. And I wasn't thinking about what their other potential motives might have been, right? So I was letting myself be led by people that I shouldn't have allowed to lead me or influence me. And that was one. And the second one was I was approaching cards as commodities or a stock, as if I was buying a share in the success of like Ja Morant, Luka, or Kevin Durant. Like, right? I was treating a high population report as a signifier of like something like a market cap, when I should have been looking at them as warning signs, right? And so, how those two things guide me today is like, I am going to listen to people, but I'm going to listen to people that I respect, right? Like I am going to listen to people that have shown me that they think about these things deeply and they have an expertise. And I'm going to do that with eyes wide open about what their own kind of biases and orientations might be. And then I'm going to do my own research and make my own decisions about things, about what is important to me. And then the second thing is I kind of try to stay away from buying something just because I think it has to go up, right? Like nothing has to increase in price, right? Like, a player could win a championship tomorrow and the market could get flooded and their prices can go down, right? Like that is not, I want to be thoughtful about value, about how much I am, how much of like my limited resources I am investing I am putting towards a particular thing. But I want as much as possible to get away from like thinking of this as like an Nvidia stock or something like that. I'm thinking about it more as like, well, this is a piece that I would like to add for my collection for a certain period of time. I would hope that like I am finding value in that particular piece, but it is more about like a curation kind of thing rather than a speculation thing.
Well, as many have pointed out, in the month after Patrick Mahomes won consecutive Super Bowls, his card started to go down, not up. And if that can't satisfy us as a market, quote unquote market, then nothing will. So thank you for this. I just want to stress again, please don't feel embarrassed. Nobody should. These are wonderful stories. And I love the perspective. And congrats on pulling yourself up. And thank you for staying in the hobby, because that means I get to be friends with you and get to chat with you. And thanks for your time.
Thanks so much, Dave.